Hey, what's up everybody? This is Andre. I'm out here on a beautiful Saturday morning. It's not raining, it's not too cold, and it's late fall, so it makes it a beautiful day. Definitely thankful for that. I'm out here with a wife out here doing a bike ride on a Saturday. So what I want to talk to you guys about today is something that comes up over and over and over and over in my tax practice. And it's the disadvantages of having a nonprofit and what a lot of people aren't necessarily talking about. So before I get into that, I'm not going to talk about anything as far as current events on this ride right now. I think next time I'll have some more opinions that I'll express, but not today. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So let me pass up here. You can see Boo Bae back there in the background. Hey, baby. All right, so.
0 miles, duration 40 minutes and 20 seconds.
So let me slow down here. I usually let her ride in front. I ride on point on security, and I'll go ahead and fall back here. But let me go ahead and talk about it. Let's talk about nonprofits. So I don't know how many times I've had people, kind of like go down the list that they're doing great, they're doing wonderful. They're like, I've got a trust, I've got a LLC, I've got a nonprofit, and my LLC is identifying as an S corp. So it's like, okay, cool. So what's really going on here with your LLC? Well, I don't have any money yet, but I'm just trying to get myself set up and structured, because the rich do what the rich do, and that's where the tax code is written. So I went ahead and got all this stuff all set up. I'm like, okay, cool. All right, awesome. And so let me break down one of the major misconceptions when it comes to a nonprofit. So the thing is, the reason why nonprofits exist, let's kind of start there. So everybody would love to have us live in a socialist society, meaning that pretty much every major service or opportunity to help people, etc., is all funded and taken care of by the government. But that's not the case. So, and the government's not capable of doing that, nor are we structured with our current, political system to be able to take care of everybody's basic needs. So that's the reason why the 501c3 was originally created. It was to allow individuals to take on something that was socially based, like a social responsibility that would help out mankind. And most important, while they're in the process of doing that, because when it comes to being a nonprofit, it doesn't mean you don't make a profit. Any business, which a nonprofit is, they have to make a profit. They have to bring in more revenue than their expenses to be able to survive and keep going another year. And I don't care what kind of business you have, if you don't have the ability to keep money coming in or pull money out of your pocket to go ahead and pay, in the end, what's going to happen is that business is going to go bust. And just because you have a nonprofit, there are no guarantees that everything is going to work out in your favor, And so what the government said, all right, cool. If there's something specific, local, regional, or national that you are passionate about, what you can ultimately do is you can write into us, fill out some basic paperwork, and say, hey, I want to do this and not be taxed, and if we can do that, I would like to seek status. And so the main reason why you seek status in the first place is because if you don't do it, what ultimately ends up happening is, and I'll tell you, I have a lot of clients that ask me all the time, they're like, hey, I want to get my tax bill down. I want to give a bunch of money to the church. How much money is that going to save me? And in the end, I said, you know what? Don't go out of your way and give money to anybody for a tax deduction, because it's not worth it. If it's something you're doing because you feel good about it, or there's a cause you want to support, give money. The fact that you get a deduction is going to be something that's going to be secondary or on the third leg. So, and as we're talking here, that's the thing you got to really be concerned with. So ultimately, when you're here, hang on one second real quick. Got to make sure we get around this corner. All right, so if you do set yourself up as a nonprofit, what's going to ultimately happen is, keep going that way, babe. Yeah, what's going to ultimately end up happening, oh, you want to go up there? Okay, that's fine. Here, let's turn around here real quick. We're going to go up. So what ultimately ends up happening is that if somebody gives you a donation, they get a deduction on the back end. And if somebody gives a donation to, so people ask me all the time, I give all this money away to my kids. Can I deduct that anyway? No. If you give money to a nonprofit that doesn't have an active status, you can't deduct those. And so, like I said, a lot of people will give money as a secondary or third option for saving on their taxes. So, you know, and if you can just give somebody some money and not get a benefit from it, you might as well just give it to your family, you know? And so a lot of people aren't going to try to do that at all. So that's the reason why you end up getting nonprofit status with the government. So when you do solicit donations, individuals will feel compelled and happy for the fact that they get to write off those donations as a deduction. So it's all good. So here, hang on a second. Let's get through this cobblestone. It's a little bumpy. So getting back to the government. So like I said, the government gives everybody the ability to write in through correspondence and come up with an idea, fill out a bunch of paperwork, and then when they're done doing that, they have to wait a little bit, and then the government will turn around and issue and grant you status, which is great. And so once you have status, you can now go out, raise funds, you know, you can apply and get grants, etc., and pull money in order to have it make, you know, that's essentially the revenue base of your nonprofit. And so whatever the purpose is that you guys are approved for, in order to keep your funding that comes in, here, hang on.
Distance 6.0 miles, duration 47 minutes and 24 seconds.
All right, I think we're coming up on the area here where they have we passed it earlier by our house, but they're doing the Richmond Marathon. So there's a lot of folks up here. You'll see them behind here. I think ground zero where they maybe started and stopped is down this way. So you'll be able to see a lot of runners. It's definitely a treat. I might look into seeing if we can do it next year. Maybe just walk it or something like that. Walk, run, jog, you know, so it all depends upon how much and how long it is. So you're out there raising funds, you're a nonprofit, you're doing your business, and then the government, like I said, has granted you status. You know, so at that point, you know, the whole idea is they are allowing folks to operate and do things that benefit society. So ultimately, all the stuff I'm talking about just makes it so you realize that if you start a nonprofit, you don't actually own it. So it's designed to operate and run and for the public good. So it's considered to be a public trust. And so which means that, you know, if you start it, you're the one that does it. That doesn't mean that you own it any kind of way. And like if you have a business that ends up ultimately collapsing, you know, you just can't take everything from the nonprofit, absorb it into your asset ledger and keep on going. So here, hang on a second real quick. Just make sure we're good. They're giving out pizza. You guys can see what's going on out here. It's pretty hardcore. A ton of people came out. Let's see here. There's a lot of people down there, so I'm just gonna focus here real quick, make sure we don't hit anybody. Okay, we're good. All right. Man, there is a ton of folks down here. This is really exciting. I think ultimately I would love one day to do the New York City Marathon, just walk it. So we'll see one day. And I think the coal train is running through here too, which is always one heck of a treat. All right, let's see here. Okay, still doing good. All right, man, look at all the folks up on the hill. This must be the completion area. Really, really smooth. Folks can get a beer if they want to. And what a hell of an accomplishment. All right, hang on a second. All right, I didn't expect there to be this much going on here where I can't continuous talk, but at least you can kind of see what's happening behind me here, and which is really, really cool. So we're just gonna go down here and go over the bridge and then come back. Wow, this is really, really cool. So many people. Here, baby, let me go in front. That way I can clear the way.
Hell yeah, dude.
All right. We're almost there. Man, there's thousands of people down here today. I don't want to hit anyone and don't want to wreck anything at all. So let's keep it going here. All right, let's see where baby's at. She's doing good, cool. All right. All right. You guys will see in a second here the coal train. All right, just cut through here. No, you're good. Wow, this is crazy. Oops. All right, we are good. All right, no alcohol beyond this point. All right, I think Maryland's doing good. So once we get through here, it'll thin out a little bit. Right behind you.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're right, yeah. Continue.
Okay. Excuse us. All right, I think we're good. All right. So where were we? Yeah, so like I said, let me just recap real quick. So the whole idea with the nonprofit is that's going to allow you to do something that's in the public good and you know, help the cause out here. And hopefully you have the ability to raise money, or you got connections where, you know, you'll be able to easily fund the nonprofit and keep it going. And so one of the most difficult challenges that you're going to find when it comes to having the nonprofit is a couple things. So we're good.
What's that?
All right, Marilyn's back there, she's okay. Cleared the way. All right, so one of the most difficult challenges you're gonna find when you do set up a nonprofit is that being able to raise funds, you know, and so if people are saying, get your nonprofit, you know, raise funds, it's very, very difficult to be able to do that. That's probably one of the biggest challenges when it comes to having a nonprofit. And so you're thinking like, well, all I gotta do is go out there and get a whole bunch of government funds and apply to foundations and all that. That's very, very, very difficult to do also as well, you know. And so what ends up happening is you end up approaching these people, you don't really have any type of track record. There are so many scams out there right now that take place. And most importantly, these larger nonprofits and government entities, they're very much aware of that. So there's the hurdle that you have to jump through in order to be able to get the funds is very, very difficult. It's hard enough for nonprofits to raise funds that are already established, much less if you decide to take on this adventure yourself and try to go ahead and raise funds. So let me let baby get in front of me real quick. All right. Here we go. These little dinger bells are highly useful. Yeah. So like I said, it's very difficult to go out there and try to raise funds. Let's say you're successful in being able to bring in a little bit of money, you know, to be able to accomplish your mission. The other challenge that you're going to face is you got to set up a board of directors, and you have to operate under Robert's rules when it comes to, you know, being able to keep minutes and have everything be brought to a vote, you know. And so you're going to have to try to find individuals that hopefully have an expertise in what you're trying to do. And let's go here. Just gonna go right here, excuse us. All right. Yeah, you gotta operate under Robert's rules of law, and you gotta have procedures where everything is talked about, everything is discussed, every dime, nickel, penny, buck that's being spent, the board is completely aware of it, because ultimately in the end, if you end up serving on a board of directors, here, hang on a second.
Distance 7.0 miles. Duration 57 minutes and 50 seconds.
All right, so if you end up serving on a board of directors and the nonprofit is doing some schemy stuff with the money, you're responsible for it, you know. And so you have to have, one of the things you can do is you can actually go ahead and get board and directors insurance that helps protect individuals. But if there's like criminal related things, you know, a lot of times there's provisions in these policies where they won't kick in and pay anything that may potentially and possibly be due. So, you know, it's one of those things where you got to get people involved. Hopefully those people that you bring to the board can ultimately donate money or give money to the nonprofit. That way you can use those funds to turn around and make a difference in the program that you're trying to establish, or the good that you're trying to do within the community. So, you know, and I've talked to a number of people that have established the nonprofits, and they are completely unaware of these responsibilities. They think they can just run it like a business, they can have their own personal checking account, all that kind of stuff. You can't. You got to remember, This is a completely separated entity from who you are, and it needs to operate on its own separately. So it's got to have its own bank accounts, it's got to file its required disclosures, etc. Then there's quite a bit of paperwork that's involved too. You're going to have to file on an annual basis a tax return with the feds and sometimes the states. And if you don't do that within a period of usually 3 years, you don't file anything, they'll go ahead and yank your nonprofit status. Then you have to work really hard to get compliant. And then another example is, as I was saying, this is a separate entity. The one thing you have to realize, because it is a public trust, that you don't own the nonprofit, and it belongs to the good of the community. If you decide to establish the nonprofit, you become the executive director, you've got a wonderful Christmas holiday title, you're the president, whatever it might be. You know, in the end, what can happen is that you can be voted off your board and you lose access to the nonprofit. I have a number of clients that have nonprofits that have started it, and I always advise them. I say, hey, you got to be careful about who you have around you when it comes to being on the board and voting members. Because at any one point, as long as there's a simple majority, you can be voted out of the board and you can lose your access to your nonprofit. And is that right? No. Is it fair? No, because you've worked so hard to put it together, but that's just the way the law works. So like I said, it's not your nonprofit. The nonprofit itself belongs to the people. So you can kind of take a look behind me here. You can see the bridge overlook. You know, so right down here on the bottom is where folks will come out here and climb these walls on the weekends. So they've got a number of different anchors, and then they'll practice rock climbing. And the other thing that happens is, or the other thing that happened is that this used to be a bridge that was, these are all the trusts that held it up. You can see that there. And so what ended up happening is 1865, when the Confederacy fell, when they evacuated and they left out of here, they burnt all this stuff down. You know, so these are like the last little remnants of the bridge that was here. And of course, it's very difficult to burn stone. But when you get down there a little bit closer to the river, you will ultimately be able to see parts of the bridge that are still in the water. And they've been there since 1865, 1965. So coming up on 200 years. It's a long time, you know. So just shy of, 200 years, so maybe 30 years or something like that. But yeah, so let me get back here to the nonprofit. So the thing is, with the nonprofit, I'm gonna let baby here take a few pictures. We haven't been down here in a while. I come all the time. But what ends up happening with the nonprofit is, if you decide, if your board decides to vote you out for whatever reason, you've lost access to your board. You know, and so like I said, the board doesn't belong to you. You can maybe influence the people that are there. The nonprofit doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the public. And so this is one of the things that folks that oftentimes establish a nonprofit don't realize. They're like, well, I have my nonprofit. It's not your nonprofit, it belongs to the public. And all it takes is, and you at a minimum have to have at least 3 board positions, you know, the president, probably the vice president, and a secretary, you know, and a lot of boards have much larger voting, because you can have people that are directors, and you can have board members. And so typically you can have, 20 people that are responsible for different parts of the nonprofit. They can chair a committee, chair of marketing, chair of, client engagement or whatever like that. But only the board members that hold a voting position can decide on which way can decide on the direction, and they're the ones that meet for the meetings, and they do all the reviews of the board minutes, and they make all the decisions, and they vote on everything. So like I said, it's one of those things where if you have a board that's 5 people, you know, and for whatever reason they decide they don't want you there anymore, as long as there's a majority, which would be 3 people, they can vote you off the board and they can install another person. And then also on top of that too, you have to follow the bylaws, you got to set those up, and that's usually something you have to submit in order to be able to you know, pass the basic test of having a nonprofit. But you got to follow all those rules, you got to document everything. And then the most important thing is, people say, well, I don't necessarily have to worry about taxes and all that because there's a $50,000 rule where if I don't bring in $50,000, I can file like on a simple postcard. I have a number of clients that are working towards being something big. And even though they have no requirement to file anything more than just a postcard to say that they're in business, they have me go ahead and file a full tax return for them, because the thing about the 990, which is what the IRS one, it is one of the most difficult returns to process and fill out. You know, so when I turn around and do a nonprofit return, I think I charge like $950 or $1,000 to do a nonprofit tax return. You know, so it is what it is, and because it's a lot of work, and so when you go through one of these full-fledged tax returns, they're about 50 pages with everything that's there, and there's tons and tons and tons of information and disclosures and checks and double checks and discussing every aspect of relationships and things like that as they may apply to the board members, and how money's raised and how money's being spent. You know, so it gives you a full look into the nonprofit altogether. And so if you're trying to go after some of the bigger money, you know, it's always a good idea to have that type of return completed in full. You know, and if you are doing big sales and you need to be able to have, you know, that particular return done, that's a lot of cupcakes you got to sell to come up with $1,000. You know, so these are some of the things you're going to have to think about. Okay, we're still rolling here. You guys can see behind me, the river is beautiful out here for sure. All right, so here, hang on a second. All right, we're gonna be coming back into the Calamity here in a second. So I'm gonna get in front of Maryland. That way I can cut through and make a way. Hey, so I'm gonna pass you up. So this just makes it easy on her to not have to, you know, worry about dealing with everybody. So.
Distance 8.0 miles. Duration 1 hour, 7 minutes, and 30 seconds.
All right. And so I realize a lot of people aren't paying attention. You know, they're in the zone and element of being with their family and their friends. They're a little bit tired here. So my brother is not mad at anybody that may step out. My goal is just to let people know that I'm right here, and I make whatever adjustments I need in order to make sure that no one gets hurt and no one gets ran over. So. Okay. All right. So let's scroll down here, come back into the juice. All right, so we're gonna make a left turn here. All right, Maryland is behind me. We're good. I think it's a 26.2 mile race is what I'm seeing on everybody's, on their medals that made it. So if you walk 3 miles an hour, maybe 4, it'll probably take you, you know, probably 6 or 7 hours to finish it. So it's a hell of an accomplishment for sure. And if you're just going to just walk it, it's still a lot of walking as well. All right, so hang tight, sit tight. We're working our way through. All right, we're going to be up here in a minute. We'll be able to turn left and work our way out of here. And I see a number of people all the time on Facebook that do 5Ks and 10Ks. Okay.
Excuse us.
Thanks. All right, let's just follow him.
That's okay. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Okay. All right, we are almost out of here. It is crazy down here. Okay, we're almost out of here, folks. I'm really excited that we were able to do this today. You good, baby?
I only want
All right. All right, you good? You ready? Okay, all right. So let's go ahead and keep rolling here. So hang on, guys. All right. So that's the fun thing about these little conversations. You know, most of the time they're quick and right to the point, but at least you guys have something nice that you can see here. This is one of the many things that happens down here in RVA, you know, and we're down here where they have the Civil War Museum. We have not been here. It's huge, you know, and then they've got a trailer here. If you got your bag and stuff like that, you can check it in, you know, so, but they're definitely well organized down here doing what they are doing. So let me down here just a little bit further. And then what we're going to end up doing is we're going to end up riding over to, I think, is it Bell Island? I forget. If I'm saying it wrong, forgive me. But, all right, we're clear here. So let me make sure Maryland is good. Yeah, straight. Yep. All right. So we're doing good here. All right, so let me go ahead and jump back on it. We're in the clear for sure. So like I said, you can lose your nonprofit, you can be voted off the board, and you know, and I'll tell you, there was a point where pretty much, this is the thing, I am an accountant, and nonprofit accounting is one of the most difficult things that you can deal with government accounting. A lot of people don't understand about permanently restricted, temporary restricted, unrestricted funds, being able to account for stuff, being able to report for stuff. And most nonprofits, when they're starting out, they're volunteer organizations. So a lot of times you don't really necessarily know what you're doing when it comes to that. So, so yeah, you don't know what, you don't necessarily know how to do that. So what always ends up happening is, I don't know, I can probably tell you I've been asked at least 100 times to be on boards, you know, because what ends up happening is they end up hiring people. They got a treasurer, they got a secretary, vice president, they've got a, you know, president, sometimes an executive director, and they don't know how to make financial statements and be able to report to the board and be able to do it accurately. And so, and that's one of the strengths that you have to kind of do when it comes to having a nonprofit. You bring people onto the board that have industry experience in the things that you want to do. So ultimately, in the end, you can utilize that expertise and not have to pay for it, And you can use that to be able to further the mission of the nonprofit itself. So like I said, I get asked all the time to be on boards. And I think ever since I've been a professional, graduated from college with at least a 4-year degree in accounting, I've always been asked to be on boards. And I'm thankful that I was, because early on in the beginning, that's how I learned how to do taxes for nonprofits, because I was on one of the well-known organizations and that's national, that's an affinity group for accountants. And I was responsible for handling all the expenses, and one of the duties was to actually file the tax returns. So, and that's how I learned how to do that. And now I've probably got, 10, 12, 13 nonprofits, and I've got, majority of those are established. I've got other ones over the years that have kind of come in, thought that they can pull it off, and couldn't raise any money, and they end up folding and shutting everything down, So, and I've got other ones that have started, and they came from very, very humble beginnings, and now, the person that founded it originally is taking a salary, or they're doing a stipend, and they're getting paid now from the nonprofit from doing the actual work. So the thing is, when you first start out and you think you're going to be able to get paid this way, it doesn't work that way. You got to have at some point a lot of excess cash over your expenses. Then maybe you can start getting reimbursed for stuff, or you can start getting, you can start drawing a salary if things are pretty consistent. And the thing too, a lot of times, is you might think, well, I can raise a whole bunch of funds and I can turn around and have the government pay me a salary. That's not true. Most of the times when you raise funds, a lot of times they'll give you money towards a particular purpose, which does not include like administrative stuff. So they may want to help you put on an event, or they might want to help you put on, a particular program, or offer a particular service for the community. Their goal is not to fund the salaries of the people that are on the board of directors, or even the founder, even though it's your idea to do this wonderful thing. So it's a lot of it has got to be a passion project. And if you're trying to ultimately get paid on these things and make a lot of money, that's not the way it's set up, and that's not the way it's designed. So if you're running into folks that are talking about things in those particular terms, but there's plenty of them out there, I would say, hey, that's not the way the nonprofits work. So ultimately in the end, what this all comes down to is, and we're gonna ride through here. This is so beautiful. I love the canopy. You can see the colors of fall here. It is just fantastic. Here, hang on.
Distance 9.0 miles. Duration 3 hours, 17 minutes, and 58 seconds.
All right, so we're making it through here. To our right is the James River, and it hasn't been raining much lately, so we're just getting ordinary flow through here. You can almost really cross the river in some spots because the water level is low and the flow is low. But during the summertime, the water is up here at many times to the edge, of the banks. So this is definitely a time where things are kind of, subtle for sure. So back to the nonprofit. So like I said, the nonprofit belongs to the people. You can be voted off the board. And then the other thing that's probably the big thing that people don't realize is, like in California, for example, they have the Attorney General. They sit on top of all the nonprofits. There's a minimal fee you have to pay to them every year. And if you don't, they can disqualify your status, and Essentially what they're requiring you to do is fill out some basic paperwork, submit a copy of the tax return, and that's at a minimum what you have to do to kind of stay in compliance with them. And so ultimately, what ends up happening is, let's say for example, you start a nonprofit and you buy a bunch of computers, a bunch of laptops. Let's say you're doing like an after-school educational program, right? The nonprofit buys a bunch of laptops, a bunch of computers, a bunch of desks. You know, they got a bunch of pencils and paper and other things. So if for some reason the nonprofit is no longer viable and you have to shut it down, you have to follow all the ordinary procedures that are required to shut down the nonprofit. So you're gonna have to contact the IRS, contact your state, you know, fill out other necessary paperwork. But the most important thing is you got to pay off all the debts that the nonprofit owes, and whatever assets are left over. Let's say that there's $10,000 left over in the bank account, right? And you got a whole bunch of MacBook Pros that you've purchased to help kids learn how to program. When you shut it down, you just can't take that stuff and take it home or distribute it amongst the board members. You have to find another nonprofit and distribute. There's some guys out there on kayaks right now. You got to turn around and distribute all that money to the next nonprofit. And so the other nonprofit that has a similar mission, you grant them the laptops, the cash, and whatever assets are left over. Then you can finally formally shut the nonprofit down. So the thing is, if you have a business and you decide you don't want to operate it anymore, it's just an ordinary sole proprietorship or something like that, the stuff really belongs to you. You know, it's all inside the same pocket. But when it comes to a nonprofit, whatever you have acquired under the interest of the public, because like I said, it's a public trust, you got to turn those assets over to another organization that has a similar mission so that they can utilize those assets and continue on with their mission. And if something happens to that nonprofit, you know, like for example, like the Red Cross, everybody knows about them, they're huge. You know, they bring in a lot of donations, a lot of revenue, all that every year, you know, very, very large. If they decide to shut down and no longer do what they do, whatever they own outside of what's left over after they pay everything off, they got to find another equivalent nonprofit to be able to give the money to. So they got to turn it over to them, then they can formally shut it down. So the CEO, the CFO, the employees can't just do like a bonus payout and pay themselves all the remaining assets. It's illegal, you can't do that. You got to turn everything over to another organization so that they continue on with their mission. So that's it, guys. That's the way nonprofits work. And like I said, there's a lot of paperwork that's involved. You are responsible and you commit to being able to raise funds in alignment whatever your mission is. And that's part of what you're essentially pledging and the reason why you're asking for this status. And most importantly, if things go bad, you know, you're SOL. So you're responsible for everything that's happened under the nonprofit, under your leadership, the board of directors. They're responsible for all that stuff also as well. And, you know, it's a lot to be responsible for, to try to set up something that you think that you can ultimately skate by and work out a way of, you know, kind of beating the system when it comes to paying taxes in the US. So, you know, that's just kind of want to let you guys know. And then I want to tell you real quick, I was actually on a board, and this was, like I said, I've always been on a board since I've been out of college. And so now I'm at the point where I don't do anything for free. So if I'm going to serve on a board now, because my skills are so valuable, I always get a stipend. And even if it's just something, I'm cool with that, you know. and it helps compensate me for my time and for my expertise. And this is something that if I wasn't there, they're gonna have to pay a lot of money for. And there's a lack of folks that are willing to jump on the nonprofits that have, financial background of, books and all that stuff, and be able to jump in and provide expertise. So that's kind of where I am right now. If I'm on the board of the nonprofit I'm on now, and I'm off of it at some point in the future, I have no plans of joining any other nonprofits in the future unless I'm stipend for my time, and so that's fair enough. And I got a lot to offer. So at some point you have to put a price on your net worth, or what your worth is. And so I don't have a problem ultimately doing that. So getting back to it. So I served on a nonprofit at one point. I'm not gonna say anything super specific. And the nonprofit had an incredible mission in what they were doing. I'm not even gonna say what that is at all either. And within this mission, I was really thoroughly impressed by what these guys were doing. And so, here, hang on.
Distance 10.0 miles. Duration 1 hour, 25 minutes, and 38 seconds.
And at the time, they said, hey, do you want to jump in and help us? I was like, yeah, sure. So I became the treasurer. I got voted onto the board, and immediately went in, started helping out with the accounting, QuickBooks, taxes, all that type of stuff, providing expertise that everybody can really rely upon. No big deal. And at the time, there were a few founders and a few board members that were on the board, and it got to the point where there was a power play that was happening. And a couple of the board members, they were trying to get together and trying to oust some of the other board members. And I kind of saw what was happening. And make a long story short, in the end, the rest of the board members got together and we talked, and we figured out what was happening. And we were presented with information and evidence that was provided by the other side. Whether it was true or not doesn't make a difference at this particular point. But what we ended up doing was, during this long meeting that we were having, I put a motion on the table to vote off 2 members of the board. And of course, the people that were there, that were involved in the incident, and they were trying to present it a certain way, they voted against it, and everybody else that was on the board voted on my side. And so in the end, those 2 people were stunned and they were off the board. And like I said, they had a very, very long and intimate involvement with that nonprofit. But we as a board, like I said, it's public trust. We're trying to do what's best under all circumstances for the people that are involved. And you can't bring egos to the table. You can't bring anything other than the interest in wanting to do what you can do to help folks the best that you can. And if you are functioning in any other kind of way, that is a very toxic thing for the nonprofit to be involved in. So we voted them off, and immediately ended the meeting, and the other folks, there is nothing that they can do, and they're gone. And so that's what I'm saying. I tell people all the time, be cautious. If you start a nonprofit, be cautious of who you have on your board, because in the end, you can be voted off, and you don't necessarily want to do anything that would, let's see where baby's going here. Baby, are you going to the left? So I think she's going up here. Let me follow her real quick. Oh man, let's see. Did you derail? Okay. Where are you going? That way? Okay. Let's see here. Let me go up here real quick. All right. Let me pedal here. All right. It's steep. Okay. Yeah, because I think that one goes somewhere else. All right. So that's it, guys. That's what I want to tell you guys about. Give you a practical example about nonprofits and how they work. And if you are in the process of trying to establish something because you think that it's a way to be able to get over in the system, and these are different things you got to kind of pack together and stack up. That way you can have what I call the holiday brag pack. Just think twice about it, you know, so, and you figure if you are really going to intentionally try to set one up, you're going to probably have to put 5 to 7 years worth of blood, sweat, and tears before you finally build momentum where folks can, you'll be able to easily raise money based upon your track record and your word of mouth and your goodwill within the community. And then at some point down the road, you'll be able to take a salary or a stipend based upon, you know, your efforts. And then ultimately, when you take a salary or a stipend, it's something that's got to be approved by the board. And so if the board is not in on it, it's not ever going to happen. You know, so these are all things that you want to think about. So that's it, guys. I want to go ahead and cut out right now. And we're done. And I want you guys to enjoy yourself and have a wonderful weekend. And we will talk another time. Peace. Yeah, I'm just going to keep going. Yeah. Both of them? This one? Okay. All right. All right, so baby is feeling adventurous today. So we're over here on the backside of this trail. So let me keep my wits about me here. All right, I did this trail one time before. It is fantastic. And the cool thing is, over here in Richmond, we're not far from downtown. You have places like this where there's an incredible wilderness. So I forget the name of the trail, but all right. Let's see here. Let's see how far she wants to go. Okay. Which way are you going? Okay. Yeah, I know. Up this way? Okay. All right, so actually the trail, it's behind us. I think one day in the summertime, I will go ahead and ride it. So, let's see, where's baby at? Okay, let me just keep pedaling here, slow down a little bit. She'll be coming in a second. All right, and I tell you guys, find something that you and your honey boo boo, whether it's your boyfriend, girlfriend, fiance, husband or wife, that you guys can get out and do. And hopefully it's something that involves, you know, some physical activity where you guys go out and walk, ride a bike, you know, play tennis, you know, have a skateboard that you like to ride, whatever it is. Just get out and get involved and finding something you guys both enjoy doing together. So let me go ahead and let her go here. Just keep going. Okay. All right. Oh, this is the other way. Oh, wow. Are we going left or right? Right? Okay. All right. I've never been this way before. Wow. Okay. Huh, I've never been this way before. Huh? This is easier than riding the other way. All right. So there you go. My wife got a little shortcut that we can use because typically there's a hill up here to the left, actually to the right, and it's brutal to try to ride up it, but this one kind of edges stuff out over a greater distance, so it makes it a little bit easier to do. All right, so, and I'll move out this way here so you guys can see behind me. Yep. And all right, I think that's it. So when we get down here to the light, I'm gonna shut it down. And I've enjoyed talking to you guys. And thanks for listening to me ramble. Hopefully you guys found some good information and hear what we were talking about today. And if there's anything I can ever do to help, reach out to me, book a consultation if you're not a current client. It's $195 for about an hour to be able to talk. And sometimes I run a little bit over, you know, and still charge you that particular price. That's why I say about an hour. But I'm here to share my knowledge and information and wisdom that I've gathered over the years. And
Distance 11.0 miles. Duration 1 hours. 37
all right, hang on a second.
minutes and 32 seconds.
The goal always is to allow you to utilize the tax code as much as possible. Woo, I almost ran into that. Utilize the tax code as much as possible to minimize your tax burden. So that's what it all comes down to. All right, guys, this is the final one. Peace out, peace out, peace out, peace out, peace out. All right, baby. Want to say goodbye?
Bye.
Okay. All right, guys. Oh, you can just go through here.